So, as a collector of modern classic cars, I'm often asked the question, so go on then, what's the best car that you've owned? And the answer usually surprises people, but it is absolutely perfect. The car in question? The Mark 1 Mazda MX5. Or more specifically, my Mark 1 Mazda MX5. And I say that because this particular example is absolutely sublime. I've driven quite a few of these MX5s over the years, and not all MX5s are born equal. There are certainly faster ones than this and more track focused MX5s, but this one is set up just absolutely perfectly. I can't really claim the credit. It's the previous owner who was absolutely fastidious and besotted with the car, and really it's his work over the years that's kept this particular example running and working and handling just as it is. This car is totally OEM, apart from a chrome exhaust tailpipe. It's one of the early cars, the earliest UK cars came out on G regs, this being an H reg. Is it 1991 I think this? But one of the earlier cars. It's even running the original 14-inch Daisy Mazda alloy wheels, matching set of Pirelli P6000s all round, in what is an unbelievably small tyre size by modern standards, 185 60/14s. But that really does help keep the handling balance of the car just as Mazda intended. Some people are tempted to fit bigger and bigger wheels onto these cars and lower them, which is fine, but there is a real purity to the way that this car goes about its business. Personally, I think it looks perfect in Mazda red, classic red. There are a whole bunch of reasons why I love this car, and some of the detailing is absolutely fantastic. Really, the main reason I love this car is the way it drives. It is absolutely fabulous to drive down the road. The handling balance is, yeah, absolutely spot on. But I do like some of the detailing, like the door handles, just ever so delicate chrome door handles. There's nothing you don't need in one of these cars, and sort of everything that you do really. If you look at the door cards as an example, just flat pieces of plastic on the lower portion, the ability to manually lock the door locks. The car doesn't have central locking, very basic speaker system, and a padded arm rest, I suppose you could say, on the top of the door panel. But that's it. The polished door kick plinth, it's telling you're about to enter the cabin of the MX5. Cloth seats in a sort of dark navy trim. I think they faded slightly in the sun over time. They were probably charcoal when new. My example's covered 95,000 miles, which is pretty low for one of these, in fact very low for one of these now. There's the fabulous Momo steering wheel, this pad in the middle can be removed if you wanted, and it shows the metalwork behind. Double white stitching on the steering wheel. There's no luxury in here. This particular example doesn't have air conditioning. It's just a simple heater system. 4-stage blower. Blue or red, cold or hot. Where do you want it blowing? An aftermarket Sony CD player. And a stubby plastic gear lever. It's a 5-speed gearbox. And it's all the car really needs. The car's geared for around 18 miles per hour per 1000 RPM in top. So it's a revvy old thing. My example does have electric windows. They can be a little lazy when the car's not being used over winter. Get to spring and the first couple of uses, a bit of WD-40 tends to do the job. Very basic interior light and a flimsy glove box. Probably my favourite feature of the interior are these gunshot rifle type air vents. Just move around like so. Hazards, and then a switch that will pop open the headlights for cleaning. But that's it. A couple of sun visors, rear view mirror, and that's the view from behind. So it's super basic, very easy to maintain and look after, and there's really not much to go wrong on one of these. Mazda built them incredibly well, so they are remarkably reliable. But it was built to be a very simple sports car. Nothing superfluous, nothing bolted on, added on, just pure, simple summer fun. Of course, you can't talk about the Mazda MX5 without talking about pop-up headlights. Really don't do much for the for the look of the car when they're being used. They do look slightly comedic from the driver's seat, almost like a pair of bunny ears, really. And then this button here, we'll see them withdraw. The hood on these cars is just so simple. It's a one-hand operation. I'll just lift here, fold the hood forwards, and we hop in the cabin, where we'll find a latch on each side, which guides here, and you simply do that, which will lock in place. Releasing the hood is a matter of seconds. Thumb on the unlock button, latch open, and then simply hook the hood back. Open air motoring in seconds. Mechanically, again, I suppose I have to keep using the word simple. These cars are just very simple. What you're looking at here, but given this is an early car, 1991 car, this has a 1.6 litre engine. There were, certainly in the UK latterly, there was a 1.8 litre option, but this is a 1.6 double overhead cam, 16 valve, longitudinally fitted, naturally aspirated engine. It's not particularly powerful, around 110, 114 brake horsepower and 100 foot-pounds of torque, which by today's standards is absolutely laughable, really, but boy does it put it to good use. In the UK in 1994 we got a second version of this engine which was strangled to only 90 horsepower. So if you're looking for an MX5, the early 1.6s are a particular sweet spot. The 1.8 rose the horsepower to around 130 horsepower. But to give you an idea of how the car feels, that this weighs less than a ton, so there's hardly any weight for the car to push along. I say push because of course it's rear-wheel drive. And I've just gone down a country road. There was an Audi A5 in front of me and he gassed his car, and I just sat on his bumper all the way round through the curves and the braking zones and even onto the straights. 114 horsepower and a ton is enough. It's no rocket ship in a straight line, but what you can do is just carry the speed. You hardly need to use the brakes at all. But it's not about speed, it's not about how quickly you can cover ground in one of these, it's the sensations that you get in doing so. The car is, this particular example, is just so beautifully balanced. When you turn in, you can feel the back just want to come round ever so slightly, just a few degrees, which helps tuck the nose into the corner, and then it settles there. If you want the back end out, you just apply more power. Not because the power will break the traction, but because the extra speed will. And then it will just lull into a fabulous, slow, lazy slide. There's no limited slip diff on this example, so you can't use power to corrupt. You need excess road speed to do that. But you don't need to be an oversteer hero to look good. Some people think that because there's an externally fitted fog light, that this is a imported example, which it isn't. All the UK cars came with the fog light almost as an afterthought. If this was an import, we wouldn't be looking at an MX5, we'd be looking at a UNOS. Not much difference actually. I think from a collector's point of view, if you're going to get, they made lots of special editions of the UNOS and VR limiteds, etc. If you want a special edition, then that's great. If you want a sort of standard car in its purest form, I do think a UK MX5 is a good one for the collection. Some people will say that because they don't use salt in winter in Japan, a UNOS would be a better rust-free option. There's absolutely no reason why a UK example that hasn't been used through winter, such as this one, shouldn't be rust-free. This car's never been welded in the 30-odd years that it's been on this planet. And isn't that crazy to think that this design and the MX5 is 30 years of age. This example's 31. Look at it. Doesn't look remotely dated. There's no awkward angles. And because these cars are so simple, they're quite easy to look after yourself. You can service this car at home, absolutely no problems. Everything's easy to get at. There's plenty of space. 4 spark plugs are just here on the top of the engine, for example. Unusually for one of these cars, this particular example is completely unmolested, unmodified. We've even got the original airbox. There's no cold air induction kits or fancy exhaust going on here. And as you'll hopefully hear in the driving portion of this video, it doesn't really need anything more. It sounds raughty, it's revvy, yeah, it's a lovely engine to punt along. It also feels, should I say, unburstable. It feels like you could rev the knackers off it all day long and it'll just keep going. I think the sound of the engine is also helped by the fact that there's absolutely no sound deadening here. The inside of the bonnet is just painted metal. Running costs on one of these are fairly minimal. I can service this car including Bosch filters and quality oils such as Castrol, so branded fully synthetic oils for less than £40. So there's absolutely no reason not to service one of these cars. Tyres at 14-inch 185 section tyres are very reasonable, and as I say, there's not much to go wrong in terms of the cabin. Brakes tend to last forever, mainly because you don't need them. The car is that light that you can carry fabulous amounts of speed through corners, so if you want to go for a spirited drive as I have today, you don't find lots and lots of brake dust on the wheels. So you can really run one of these very cost effectively. It's not to say you shouldn't maintain it, but Mazda parts are fairly cheap, and because the car is so light, it's not heavy on suspension components, brakes, tyres, etc. Of course, we're at a time where fuel is exceedingly expensive. I couldn't tell you what this car does to the gallon. The fuel tank's only 40 odd litres, so it doesn't take much to fill it. But I imagine the car will do something in the region of mid-30s to the gallon just through its lightness and simplicity. The engine red lines at 7,000, the red markers start at 6,500, but really it feels like an engine that would rev to about 9,000. You get to the sort of 6,500 change-up point and the car is still pulling. The engine's got this vigour and enthusiasm. Most engines run out of steam and you change up early. With this one, there's none of that. So there you go, there's a review of the MX5, or in particular my MX5. As I say, they're not all the same. I'd very much recommend, if you were looking at one, to drive the example that you're looking to buy. And I know that might sound obvious, but in these days of electronic marketing, so many people will buy a car unseen. I'm not saying that you shouldn't necessarily do that. All I will say is that no two MX5s quite drive the same, and this one is an absolute peach to drive. You just wouldn't know that. You look at the service history and etc, and you'd probably guess that it would drive nicely, but yeah, the setup of this one is just fabulous. So would I recommend one? Oh yes. Oh yes, and some. If you've any interest in an MX5, if you've been thinking about should I, shouldn't I really would recommend scratching that itch. These cars, there's nothing like them, nothing quite like them, should I say. And whilst they are rising in value, they are still exceptional value for money for the quality of drive that you get. Ignore anyone who makes hairdresser quips about the MX5. They're just people who don't know what the hell they're talking about, so those aren't people to listen to. These are a proper rear-wheel drive, naturally aspirated, beautifully set up sports car. And for the money that they currently command, they're a rare bargain.